The death of small talk. Within the first 48 hours of this new biological reality, the most common interactions of human existence are entirely eradicated. Small talk dies instantly. When your daily allowance of speech is smaller than a single paragraph, you do not waste it asking a coworker how their weekend was. You do not comment on the weather. You do not say good morning to the barista. Politeness, as we know it, becomes a dangerous, unsustainable liability. Society rapidly adopts a brutal, hyper-efficient bluntness out of pure necessity. A sharp nod replaces a friendly greeting. A pointed finger replaces a spoken request. The endless buzzing white noise of coffee shops, office buildings, and busy city streets evaporates into an eerie, suffocating silence. We quickly realized that 90% of what we used to say meant absolutely nothing. It was just filler, empty acoustic space designed to help us avoid the terrifying vulnerability of pure silence. Without the protective shield of meaningless chatter, people are forced to sit in the heavy, uncomfortable reality of their own quiet minds of their own. The currency of breath. When something becomes biologically rare, it immediately becomes incredibly valuable. Words transform into the ultimate human currency. People begin treating their daily allotment like a severely limited bank account. You wake up every morning with exactly 100 words, and every single time you open your mouth, you are spending your rapidly depleting wealth. If a stranger bumps into you on the crowded street, you do not curse at them. Anger is far too expensive. To yell at someone is to give them your most precious, limited resource completely for free. You simply glare and walk away in silence. Extroverts, the people who traditionally process their complex emotions by speaking out loud, experience a profound, devastating psychological collapse. The sudden physical inability to verbalize their inner monologue traps them inside their own heads, leading to mass waves of claustrophobic panic and anxiety. Silence is no longer perceived as golden or peaceful. It morphs into a heavy, mandated psychological prison. Every syllable you utter is a mathematical sacrifice of your freedom.
The systemic collapse. By the end of the first month, the modern professional world grinds to a devastating, screeching halt. How does a brilliant university professor teach a complex, nuanced lecture in a mere 100 words? They simply cannot. Global education is forced to become entirely visual and text-based, drastically slowing down the critical transfer of human knowledge. The justice system is completely and utterly paralyzed. A courtroom, historically built entirely on the intricate art of persuasion, intense cross-examination, and relentless verbal debate, ceases to function. Lawyers are violently stripped of their primary weapon, their rhetoric. A high-stakes trial can no longer be won with a passionate, hour-long emotional closing argument to a jury. It must be distilled down to brutal, cold facts, presented silently on paper, completely removing the vital emotional nuance of human justice. The entire legal, educational, and political frameworks of our modern society must be violently torn down and rewritten from scratch to accommodate a terrifyingly quiet world, completely devoid of spoken debate.
The written rebellion. Naturally, human beings immediately begin looking for a loophole. If we cannot speak, we will write. Society heavily and desperately pivots to endless text messages, carried notepads, and digital screens. People begin walking around with small whiteboards hanging around their necks, frantically scribbling frantic sentences to order food, do their daily jobs, and express their bubbling frustrations. But writing is fundamentally cold and detached. It is completely devoid of tone, pitch, and the raw acoustic emotion of the authentic human voice. Devastating misunderstandings skyrocket across the globe. Subtle sarcasm is disastrously misinterpreted as genuine hostility. A hastily written note ends a decades-long marriage simply because the vital physical tone of empathy cannot be accurately conveyed in thick black marker. We painfully realize that while written text can effectively transfer basic data and information, it completely fails to transfer the human soul. The world becomes a giant, silent chat room full of desperate people furiously writing, yet feeling more profoundly isolated than ever before. The end of deception. One of the most fascinating and terrifying consequences of the strict 100-word limit is the near total extinction of the complex, multifaceted lie. Successful deception inherently requires a sprawling narrative. It requires weaving elaborate details, constantly backtracking, and providing lengthy, defensive explanations. You simply cannot build a convincing, watertight web of lies with only a handful of spoken words at your disposal. Serial liars and manipulators are exposed almost immediately. When someone is forced to give a simple, naked yes or no because they cannot afford the immense verbal cost to justify themselves, the cold, blunt truth forcefully rises to the surface. Deceptive politicians and corporate leaders lose their power overnight because they can no longer use an endless, confusing word salad to dodge accountability. In a silent world, a person's physical actions become the absolute, undeniable, and final proof of their true character. You can no longer talk your way out of your own toxic behavior. The truth becomes a brutal, unavoidable physical reality.
The rise of the physical. As our primary mode of verbal communication actively starves to death, the human body adapts with aggressive, terrifying intensity. Without the comforting cushion of words to soften our true intentions, physical body language becomes hyper-exaggerated and intensely scrutinized by everyone. Eye contact becomes incredibly intimate, and in many cases, outright dangerous. A prolonged, silent stare across a room is no longer just looking. It is an entire, heavy conversation. We quickly learn to read complex micro-expressions with deadly accuracy. The slight, nervous twitch of a jaw, the aggressive angle of a shoulder, the exhausted depth of a heavy sigh. Physical touch unexpectedly regains a profound, primal, and necessary power. A gentle hand resting on a friend's shoulder does the heavy emotional lifting of a 20-minute comforting conversation. A physical hug becomes the ultimate, undeniable display of human empathy. We rapidly revert back to an almost animalistic state of emotional radar, feeling the kinetic energy of the people around us instead of passively listening to their spoken excuses. The hoarders and the reckless. A brand new, highly visible social class divide emerges based entirely on how you manage your precious daily quota. On one side are the hoarders, stoic, highly disciplined individuals who strictly speak in 1 or 2-word sentences, desperately saving their daily limit for absolute, life-threatening emergencies. They're widely viewed by society as powerful, mysterious, and highly in control of their primal urges. On the opposite end of the spectrum are the reckless, impulsive people who burn completely through their 100 words by 9 in the morning, selfishly rambling in a brief moment of weakness. Their punishment is spending the remaining 15 hours of their waking day trapped in total, agonizing muteness. Absolute muteness quickly becomes the ultimate symbol of lost self-control. Seeing someone on the street desperately mouthing frantic words with absolutely no sound coming out becomes a terrifying, sobering daily reminder of our new biological cage. The ability to endure pure silence becomes the highest indicator of psychological strength and societal dominance. The weight of "I love you." The final, most profoundly heartbreaking reality of this restricted world happens quietly behind closed doors,
at the very end of the day, when you only have 10 spoken words left in your biological bank account and the sun is finally going down, exactly who do you choose to give them to? Every single word you speak to another human being is now a deliberate, calculated, and massive sacrifice of your own personal freedom. Words of deep affection are no longer casually or cheaply thrown around. You absolutely do not say, "I love you," out of mindless habit anymore. When someone looks you directly in the eyes and uses their final 3 precious words of the day to tell you they love you, it carries a physical, earth-shattering weight. It is the ultimate romantic sacrifice. It silently means, out of absolutely everything I could have possibly said today, out of every single thought I had, I chose to spend my last remaining wealth entirely on you. In a world starved of speech, love is no longer measured by poetry, but by the sheer, devastating cost of the breath it takes to declare